Hi, Eleanor. Thank you so much for joining us on Lions Down Live.
Morning, Charlotte. Thank you for having me.
And Eleanor, people often talk about having life-changing experiences, and I know that you had an experience like that 2 years ago. And so I wanted to ask, could you tell us what it was?
Yes, my life completely changed from a sermon series called the Sovereignty of God in Salvation back in 2018 when I first joined Lions Down Church.
Okay, and so to help us understand why it was so life-changing for you, could you tell us what the message was that you heard in that sermon series?
Yes, in that sermon series, I learned that God is in all control and at the centre of absolutely everything in the universe, and that everything in the universe exists to give glory to God. The glory of God means his nature and character that is revealed to us by him. So for the first time, I saw just how infinitely big God is, how perfect, holy and righteous he is, and I learned that God created the whole universe for a purpose, and that purpose was to give himself glory, and God wanting glory for himself is what makes him God, and God is committed to what's best, which is himself. And I learnt that God's glory was most ultimately displayed at one event in the whole universe, where God had planned and sent his only son Jesus to suffer and die on a cross to save his people. And the purpose and reason why God did it was to glorify himself. And those were just some of the things that I learned in that sermon series.
Okay, and how was that different to what you'd previously thought?
Well, it was a mind-blowing revelation for me, because although I'd grown up going to church and heard before that Jesus died on a cross to save people, my understanding stopped there. I used to think God did it for my own personal benefit, and it was my choice whether to believe it. And I thought somewhat the universe revolved around me, my family, and my own needs, my decisions, the way I chose to live it. But when I was confronted with this truth that actually ultimately everything in this universe exists for God's glory, I knew my life had to change in response. I couldn't carry on living the way that I did.
And how did your life change then? What was the change?
Well, with this new perspective, I was humbled. I began to see the biggest problem in my life was my sin, and not the other troubling issues that I had going on in my life at that time. My biggest problem was my sinful life that ignored the glorious, perfect God, and I deserved punishment. There was no way I could face God at Judgment Day unless I had Jesus. When I saw the glory of God, I saw why I needed Jesus, I saw the preciousness of the cross. It led me to thirst to know this God of the Bible more, to know Jesus more. My whole attitude to the Bible was completely transformed. Before, I had no interest in reading it for myself. The Bible seemed almost like a foreign language to me. But with my transformation, the Bible started to make sense. I started to see God's glory everywhere in the Bible, and I found that literally every message in the Bible pointed to Jesus and the glory of God, and that propelled me into action. Before, I didn't really care if people hadn't heard of God or Jesus, but after seeing this truth, I couldn't just keep it to myself. I wanted to share with other people how glorious our God is and what Jesus came to do. So looking back now, although I'd grown up thinking that I was a Christian all of my life, I think it was only after that sermon series back in 2018 when God chose to reveal himself to me through his word that I really came to know Jesus personally for myself.
Well, Eleanor, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And I am now going to hand back to Mark.